Why is it that caring for houseplants comes so naturally to some and is next to impossible for others? It's definitely daunting and there can be a learning curve, but knowing and understanding just a couple of things can make a huge difference. If you're finding it hard to keep your houseplants alive, you've probably overlooked one or two simple things that I'm going to be discussing in this mini-series, Houseplants 101. In this mini-series, I'm going to be giving you the building blocks, a quick and straightforward reference guide to growing the healthiest indoor plants. This series is going to be broken down into 3 parts: soil, plant, and pot. Today we're going to start with soil, and I'm going to be sharing with you the different components, their purpose and function. Understanding soil composition sounds way worse and way more complicated than it needs to. Ultimately, whatever you're potting, what you're trying to do is replicate those conditions that the plant would thrive on in the wild. Now, there are essentially 3 types of ingredients that you can include in your houseplant soil that will provide slightly different functions. Peat moss is what we typically think of when we think of soil because of the way it looks, and what peat moss does for your houseplant soil is provides some water retention, some structure, and some aeration. Now, if there is one thing that I would recommend that you remember when it comes to peat moss, is that it can actually be slightly acidic. Now, this is something that you're going to want to keep in mind, and we're definitely going to return to this point in the second video in this series. Next, we have vermiculite. So for those that didn't know, vermiculite is actually mica that's being heated. And the purpose of vermiculite is to provide drainage to your soil. Now, despite vermiculite providing some drainage to your soil, it can retain some water, so that's something to keep in mind. And vermiculite is not going to mess with your pH because it's pH neutral. Moving along to bark. Now, bark is used in our houseplant soil to provide aeration for plants that need that. Now, the thing to keep in mind when it comes to bark is it can add some acidity, like the peat moss, to your soil. Chunks of bark like this are a little bit chunkier and larger, so you shouldn't worry about too much water retention when it comes to the bark. You can definitely purchase pre-mixed soil online. This succulent mix that I picked up is, quote, dirt-free or peat moss-free, and that can really help for certain plants like succulents or cactus really develop strong root systems. Now, the final part of growing really healthy indoor plants are nutrients or fertilizers. And oftentimes I feel like this is what people are forgetting to do. They're forgetting to feed their plants. So over here I have a couple of fertilizers that I use. The most important nutrients are, of course, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Now, purchasing a liquid fertilizer that is specific to your plant type will provide the right ratio of those 3 nutrients. Specialists refer to this nutrient ratio as NPK, and ultimately all you have to do is Google any specific information into the plant that you're looking to pot indoors, and that will provide you with the specific ratio that's best for that type of plant. Now, when it comes back to these initial 3 ingredients, obviously we can change the percentages that we use of these 3 ingredients if we even use all 3 to really provide the ideal environment depending on the type of plant that we're trying to pot at home. So again, we have started with peat moss that really provides some structure and water retention for your plant that does have some slight acidity to it. Then we moved on to vermiculite, which you can use for drainage with some water retention, but it is pH neutral. And then we moved on to bark, and that provides aeration for plants that need it. In the second part of the series, I'm going to be sharing with you the magic tool that takes the guessing out of houseplants, so please stay tuned for that. Hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Until the next one.